Call to order for Watertown City Council meeting for May 1st of 2023. Please rise while Jody Brinkman, the chaplain at Prairie Lakes Hospital, leads us in prayer.
Dear Lord, as the council and affiliates gather tonight along with others, may you be with them in wisdom, help them to make sound and wise decisions, have fruitful debates, share information of value, and be willing to vote according to your will for the best outcome and future of Watertown and the surrounding communities we serve. May you hear the prayers of your people and bless Watertown, the state of South Dakota, the United States of America, and the world. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Finance Officer Bob Zine, please call the roll.
Okay. Bueller. Danforth. Pauline.
Here.
Paulson. Shuddy.
Here.
Tupper.
Here.
Vilhauer.
Here.
Thank you.
Quorum is established. The chair will entertain a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda. Motion made by Councilman Bueller, seconded by Councilman Shuddy. Any conversation on that, Council? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Now is the time for public comments. If anyone is here who would like to address the council on an issue that is not on tonight's agenda, now is your time to do so. I'll close public comments. We do have one change in tonight's agenda. We are going to pull item A. We are pulling item A. That will not be discussed tonight. With that, Chair will entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda. Motion made by Councilman Vilhauer. Seconded by Councilman Shuddy. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the agenda. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item B is a retail malt beverage and South Dakota Farm Wine license renewal for Gas and Goodies Incorporated. We'll go to our finance officer for this.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Before the council tonight is a renewal of a malt beverage. This license does have a violation. That is why it's before you as a renewal. There was an underage sale on June 15th of 2022. So the letters were sent to the owner that they needed to be present for this hearing. All notice has been given, fees have been paid, everything else is in order. If there's any questions, I can try to help. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I will open up a public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to testify on this item? Yeah. You might as well come forward. You might get a question about it. Yeah. And normally all we're going to ask for is what was behind it and were there steps taken to correct it, is essentially what will always be asked. So, but just go ahead, sit down. Yeah. Just turn on the microphone and please identify yourself.
My name is Sarah Horning, the owner of Gas and Goodies, and an employee sold to a minor, and she is no longer working for me. We have put it in the handbook to make sure that it doesn't happen in the future, and we purchased a ID scanner to be able to do the licensing and make sure that there aren't fake IDs and so forth.
All right, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to testify on this item? I'll close the public hearing, open it up for council action. Do I have a motion to renew the license? No. Motion made by Councilman Bueller, seconded by Councilman Tupper. Any discussion on this at council? Councilman Shuddy?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question: Is this the first time you've had this this offense, if you will? Yeah, since you've been owners. And all right. Thank you.
All right. Any further questions? All right. Thank you very much. All those in favor of renewing the license, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item C is a retail malt beverage and South Dakota Farm Wine license renewal for Four Amigos, doing business as the Cowboy Country Stores. Finance Officer Bob Zine, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. This again is a renewal that's before the council because there was a violation. An underage sale was made on February 15th of 2023. They also received a letter to be present, as this is the violation under the first violation for this cycle of licenses. Notice has been given, fees have been paid, everything else is in order. If there's any questions, I can try to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll open up a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to testify on this item?
Oh, okay. Adam Spies, I'm with the Cowboy Country Stores. We had an employee didn't ask for an ID and made an illegal sale in February. That employee no longer works for us. She's been terminated. That employee had been through the required training, and she was certified in that training 7 months ago. We do a lot of, we make sure every person that works for us goes through that training and is certified. And we spend a lot of time and effort to make sure that this kind of thing doesn't happen. So it's very frustrating for us, but it's our goal to be compliant 100% of the time. And I'm not sure what else I can say about it. I'd answer any questions you have.
All right, thank you very much. Public hearing is still open. Is there anyone else who would like to testify on this? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, open it up for council action. Do I have a motion to renew the license? Motion made by Councilman Villauer, seconded by Councilman Beeler. Any questions, council? All right, Councilman Schutte.
I guess, thank you, Mayor. Same question, just on that one there. Is this, I know you've got multiple locations, so, but is this a first one you said on this particular license, Ms. Bobzien? Is that correct, or?
I don't know on this specific license. It's just that, they'll be up for a renewal again for the liquor. So this is the only time he'll be testifying for this.
Okay.
Not sure. I know it's been years if there's been a violation. So.
Okay, that's what I just want to, you bet.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think it was almost 2 years ago.
And that would have been that was a different license. Yeah. That our company has a lot of different licenses.
Yeah.
And yeah.
All right, thank you, Mr. Spies. Any further questions? Councilman Danforth.
Adam, I'm asking, I don't know, but it was referenced with the previous individuals up here that they have a scanner that they run the IDs through, and apparently it is, well, my question is, how foolproof are those? Are you familiar with them? Is that something that's been considered?
Absolutely. We have employed different things like that in the past, and I'm not familiar with the one that Gas and Goodies is using, but we could certainly look into that. We've employed different things over the years with the point of sale, with scanning with an app on your phone, and different things like that, but the effectiveness is not what you think it would be. That's what we've found so far.
And we all understand that you're dependent on employees to do their job.
Correct.
And we take it very serious from our end, but so I do appreciate the fact that there might be some tools out there that helps the people, the holders of the license, to maybe have a higher surety that it might get done, something easier. So it's just a question I asked if you're familiar with them. So
Absolutely, and we'd look at using that if someone would like to get that to me, I'd absolutely look at it.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? The motion is to renew the license. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item D is a retail malt beverage South Dakota Farm Wine license renewal for Discount Liquors. Finance Officer Bobzien.
Thank you, Mayor. As stated again, this is a renewal. This license is before the council also because there was a violation. There was an underage sale made on February 15th of 2023. Again, it's the first violation in this series of licenses. Notice has been given and all fees have been paid. If there's any questions, I can help. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'll open up a public hearing. Is there someone who would like to testify on this item?
John May, owner of Discount Liquors. We did have an employee that failed everything that we actually stand for and has been released of duty. Any questions?
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else who would like to testify on this? I'll close the public hearing, open it up for council action. Do I have a motion to renew the license? Motion made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Paulson. Any questions or comments, council? Councilman Vilhauer.
John, not to put you on the spot, but I know you've been before us before.
4 years ago, yep.
Okay, I know it's been a while. So you've got controls in place, as best you can to,
As best as I can without the human factor.
sure, understood. Okay, thanks, John.
Councilman Tupper?
One comment I was gonna make, and for your guys' defense, I guess, and all of you that have been up here tonight, it has not been the license holder that's made the offense, it's been an employee. And I feel that you've all done the proper thing to, I mean, I hate to see anybody lose their job over that, but it is very important that you do your duties. So I do appreciate it, and thank God it wasn't any, the license holders themselves, so.
Councilman Beeler?
Thank you, Mayor. John, what do you do for training? What do you do to?
So we do state training, we do in-house training, we have signs hung up everywhere. I actually have a POS system that requires the employee to actually hit a series of buttons to make a sale to anybody. We do not have an ID scanner. I have found that they are not 100% correct, and they will not assure me that a sale will not be made, you know, just by using their product. As soon as I find one that will, I'm going to buy one so this kind of thing doesn't happen again, just for surety purposes, obviously.
Thank you.
Councilman Shetty?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just want to thank you, actually, all three applicants that are here tonight for being here and for the diligence to help keep the community safe in that area of your business, so appreciate it.
Any further comments? I'll just reiterate, I know that this hasn't always been the common custom for the council to call forward for a public hearing on this and to actually have someone come forward, but I do think it's probably good for the process and for the community. So Mrs. Horning, Mr. Spies, Mr. May, thank you for being here and, protecting the integrity of Watertown and your business, because it is a business and we understand that. So thank you. Councilman Paulson, you just have to get the word in after me.
Well, I just kind of wanted to expand on some of your comments, Mayor. I just want to reiterate that the council takes offenses like this seriously, and I know you guys do too as the owners. And we appreciate your time to be here, but we talked about this as a council early on, that we wanted you guys here to show that we're serious. It's not like we're just give a blanket renewal, and so that's why we want you in front of us, is tell us what happened, make sure that you guys are have the proper training or procedures in place to prevent this. But obviously we know that there's going to be human error in a lot of things, and this is why our police department runs checks occasionally on not just your establishments but everyone's, and we're just trying to hold people accountable, and I think that that's a large thing. This is a serious thing, because obviously there's laws in place for a reason. So appreciate your time, and just wanted to reiterate that this is serious, and this is not just a automatic renewal, but thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Councilman. All right. The motion is to renew the license. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item E is a second reading of Ordinance 23-08, amending the zoning map of the City of Watertown of Railroad Edition and LP Edition from its current designation of C2, Local Commercial District, to R3 Multifamily Residential District. Public Works Director Heath Von Eye will take it from here.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a second reading of this rezone application. It did pass the Planning Commission on April 6th by a vote of 6-0, recommending approval. Of course, had the first reading at the last council meeting, but it is a rezone application for a portion of land that's currently zoned C2, Local Commercial District. They would like to utilize the R3 Multifamily Residential District instead of that C2 current designation. The property is about 4 3/4 acres. It meets the minimum lot area requirement for an R3 zoning designation. This rezone to an R3 would be in line with the comprehensive land use plan, showing multifamily type of development in this area of the city. And with that, I'll pull up the map for reference and stand by with any questions along with our Community Development Manager, Randy Hanton. Yeah, this area of town is, it's right along 11th Street as you go north towards the schools, towards the college and the high school. But it's this pink shaded area. Inside this blue outline, this whole parcel would be, I'm assuming my map is up there on the screen, would be rezoned from current R3 to C2, or excuse me, current C2 to R3. You'll notice it's adjacent to an R4 to the north, an R2A to the south, an R2A to the northwest. And the other designations is around here. R3 is predominantly zoning district to the east and further to the north. So again, it fits well within all the boxes we would check from a planning and zoning standpoint.
Thank you, Director Von Eye. I will open up a public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to testify on this item?
We're going to turn it on. It's on. Hi, my name is Jimmy and I'm the owner for PJ&I, that Easy Storage, and then all the couple of apartments in town. So I'm here.
If you would just like to, I appreciate that you came forward so that we know who you are, and if you want to just stand by if there's any questions for you, I think that would be appropriate.
Okay.
Unless you had something that you wanted to offer at this point.
No.
Okay. But yeah, just stand by.
Yeah.
Public hearing is still open. Anyone else who would like to testify on this item? All right, I will close the public hearing and open it up for council action. Do I have a motion to amend the zoning map or to approve the rezone? Motion made by Councilman Paulson, seconded by Councilman Bueller. Open it up for questions, council. Questions and comments. Councilman Tupper.
This is probably more for Ms. Hanton. Randy, was there any other, I know there was one person that called in during the Plan Commission meeting with some concerns. Was there any other adjoining neighbors that ever did nothing else other than the one that called in? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there's one neighboring property owner that called in during the Planning Commission meeting actually and expressed some, not necessarily opposition, but was curious if the storage units could remain on the south stretch of the lot. They liked having storage units as neighbors, I believe is how they put it in that call. And we don't know with certainty what the final plan would be for this property, but that's definitely something that the owner or the developer would explore doing, is retaining these for vehicle storage or private storage for any higher density residential that might go in here.
Thank you. Councilman Danforth.
Thank you. On that note, Heath, if this whole thing gets rezoned to R3, can Mr. Nguyen keep renting these out to non-residents? Is storage units an allowable use in an R3?
The storage units are a conditional use in the R3, so they would have to go to the to the Board of Adjustment for the approval of that conditional use.
Okay, so that means there's a possibility that, well, he can't unless he gets approved for a conditional use.
Yes, in order for the current use to continue in a conforming fashion, he'd have to get that conditional use permit from the Board of Adjustment. Okay,
and there's the possibility that may not happen.
Correct.
And if that doesn't happen, what happens then to these units?
They could be reused as on-site storage for the residential apartments that could be built, or any of the R3 structures that could be built. That's one option. It could all get demoed, and they could build anything in the R3 district that it would allow. They could all get demoed today, and they could build anything in the C2 district that would allow that's currently zoned. So there's a lot of possibilities on what could happen.
What I want to make sure that Mr. Nguyen understands is that if this goes all R3, because I know that he is the owner of Easy Store, and that's what this is, that if this goes R3, as soon as it is official, then he's not able to rent those out on a commercial basis other than to people that are, which would be eventually the residents of the apartment that he is looking to build, correct?
Yeah, if I could call on Community Development Manager Hanton, she did address the same question in the Planning Commission meeting. I just want to get verification from her how this would be classified, the existing conditions and uses upon the approval of a rezone. Brandy, if you could take it from there on how that would get looked at.
Yes, thank you, Heath. So the storage units use would exist as legal nonconforming, even if it were rezoned to the R3 multifamily residential. Storage units are also conditional uses in the C2 district that it currently resides in. So if this property is rezoned, then if he wants to continue using the storage units that are there, and if he would need a building permit of any sort, then he would need to get another conditional use or a subsequent conditional use now that the property is rezoned. But if he does move forward with any of the permitted uses in the R3 district, then he's good to demo and potentially move these structures to other properties and then utilize the R3 zoning district.
So they're legal non-conforming if this were to pass and rezone to an R3.
Yep.
Meaning he could continue their use as is, where is, until any type of major change on the site were to trigger a building permit.
Yep.
Then that would necessitate the need to get a conditional use.
Yep.
Can I just?
Councilman Danforth, go.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to make sure, and I want to, just for sake of transparency, Mr. Nguyen and I spoke half hour before the meeting today with some of the questions and such, so I understand a little bit what his goals and objectives are, and I just want to make sure that he has a clear understanding of what some of the ramifications may be. So here's my question is, so it would stay legally non-conforming, he could rent them out, but as soon as he came to pull a building permit for the apartment that he wants to build, then he has to, that changes the rules, correct?
Correct.
So, in essence, it goes back to it. With his objective of building apartments or apartment, whatever it is, he would then need to go request a conditional use, which he may or may not obtain, correct?
Correct.
Okay, just make sure that we understand that part of it, so.
Yep, if he's wanting to keep the storage units use.
Okay, so I asked Mr. Nguyen if he was going to be using this whole property for R3 uses, the apartment, and he, probably not, I think is what he said. So would he be better off only requesting part of it that he actually would use in the R3 use and leave the, what is that, the western, probably, because that's really not buildable there as far, they could use them for garages for people that live there, but could that happen?
That point was actually contemplated in the Planning Commission meeting as well, and that discussion led to the conclusion that because the storage units are conditional use in either zoning district, it really didn't matter if it was all R3 or some of it was kept C2 because of the conditional use effect in either case. Is why that was not amended at the time at the Planning Commission.
But if the C2 currently has the allowance of these as a conditional use, that would stay with any C2 property, correct?
Yep, it would.
It wouldn't change any rules as to what he's doing today.
Correct.
Okay.
The other, if I could add to, the other thing about leaving some of it zoned C2 is it would create split zoning on a property and then it would not be able to meet minimum lot size requirements.
All right, thank you. Any further questions? Councilman Bueller?
Thank you, Mayor. Brandy, was there any discussion and planning about density and ingress egress onto 11th? Were there any concerns about that?
So we'll look at ingress and egress that will follow the engineering design standards at the time that they would apply for a building permit, and we'll go through our design review team of the site plan that's proposed. But as long as it's adhering and meeting our engineering design standards, that component should be okay. And then what was the first question of what was contemplated?
That's all. I was just concerned about the density.
Oh, okay.
And what effect that may have on 11th, the ingress egress on 11th. And I'm assuming, I don't know, are they talking about 2 ingress egress locations on 11th or 1?
No site plan has been proposed yet.
No discussion about that yet. Because, you know, I look at that and I could see where that could be an issue depending on the density. You know, with LATI right there. And I know that intersection gets real busy to the south a lot of times, and it's a 4-way stop.
Right, and that, yeah, we'll make sure engineering will review that once something is submitted and go from there as far as evaluating if traffic impact analysis is needed or not at the time that they would apply for the building permit.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Danforth.
I'm saying this tongue in cheek, but maybe that's a good spot for a roundabout, Bruce. But no. One of the things, and I've expressed this before, it was an issue in the Eastwoods area up there. Personally, going from a C2 to the R3 in this scenario, I think is a really, really good use of this land. I think it serves a lot of purpose. We need the R3 type housing. It supports, I believe, its primary tenant would typically be focused on the lake area individuals. I think it's a good location for it. So I think there's a lot of really positive things. My only concern with this is that any unit over an 8-unit building can go up to 55 feet in height. And again, I'm gonna go back to it. You know, that's probably 25 feet higher than any building that we have over at LATI right now. It's equivalent, and I'm gonna use this as an example only because it's visible, not say anything detrimental about the development. I'm gonna refer to the apartments that are on North 81. That is a really, really good use of R3 land and allowing a 55-foot height in that area. That's a great example of that. But to plop a building into here, not knowing how big that's going to be, at 55 feet high, adjacent to R2, I think there are 2 homes, I think, is what somebody said, right out their back door is going to be this massive building that's not very far from their backyards. And that concerns me. And again, I don't think this is not an issue with Mr. Wynn in regard to what his request is. He's just requesting what our ordinance allows. And this, I'm going to go back to it, I think this is a problem within our R3 ordinance. So here I think we got a great plan, a great use of the property. I can't support it if you're going to put a 55-foot building in there. And we can't hold any applicant to whatever they say they're going to do. If he says I'm going to put a 35 or a 40-foot building, we can't hold them to that. So I'm being told. So the full gamut of what goes into is allowable both in uses and in construction needs to be considered. And I don't think that's it. I don't think it's good planning to allow that kind of a structure. That's I mean, that's a high-rise in Watertown. That's a skyscraper, so to speak, in our part of the world. But one of our things that we always try to look at is, you know, the form, fit, and function. You know, we look at location, we look at size, but we look at height, and does it fit the character of the neighborhood? I would question that a 55-foot building fits the character of a neighborhood like that. I love the idea of retransitioning and redevelopment. There's a lot of real positive things there. I have concerns with that. We have height restrictions in our R1 and our R2 zoning. 35 foot. Why do we have that? Because we're ignoring it now, right next door. And then we have, for whatever reason, in the R3, we're saying if it's 8 apartments or less, we're restricting them to 35 feet. But if you want to go over 8 apartments, then you go ahead and go to 55. Well, if it's, where's the logic with that? Again, I get it because up north, in that, with those apartments, that's a great application for this, for that 55 foot. Problem is, if we approve this, Mr. Nguyen could go into there, and as long as he meets his setbacks, he could build a 100-unit apartment, and it could be 55 feet high. And for that reason, I'm gonna go back to it, and again, I apologize to Mr. Nguyen for this, because he's just looking to rezone something within our ordinance language. I disagree with what our ordinance language is, and that is the reason why I'm gonna vote against this, so, thank you.
Community Development Manager, Annie?
And actually, I'll check if, Heath, did you want to respond at all, or otherwise I can kind of answer some of those?
Yeah, to Councilman Danforth's points, you know, if there's concern over the R3 maximum height limit, it's obviously there for a reason, because R3 you want to allow for taller structures for apartment buildings. But I get your point being, is that an appropriate transition next to an R2? That's really what it boils down to, or next to any zone for that matter. In this particular case, I just wanted to cite that we are downgrading this from a C2 that allows for up to a 60-foot building down to an R3, which then allows for up to a 55. So it's actually lesser of an ability to build a tall structure than what is currently zoned right now today. So I just wanted to make that point of and add it to the discussion for you guys' consideration as well.
And then if I could add too, for the R3, so there's the different thresholds of the 3 to 8 units, the 8 to 12 units, and then the 8+ units. And the main thing about the R3 is it kind of is broken down into 3 multifamily districts. And then everything is limited by the square footage of the lot. So the density can only be so much, and it also depends on the number of bedrooms per unit. So if you were going to do a 2-bedroom unit, then you would need 1,200 square foot per dwelling unit of the lot area. So that's where the density maximums come into place, or the density restrictions come into play, where depending on the size of your lot, and I didn't do the math on this one of what the max density could be, but that's where you end up getting a lot of the restriction as far as like how many stories you need for a building, setbacks, whatnot, all of that. So that is where, you know, for a lot like this, they might not be able, and they might have to go narrow and tall to be able to meet, or, you know, try to maximize their density to make this property work for development. But there's also the restriction on that part too, so.
Follow up,
Brandy, and so as we sit here today, we don't know what that is though, right? You don't have a plan, site plan.
No.
You know, and we haven't done the calculations, and I understand that, to know what that all entails when the dust settles, right? What all the rules or the requirements, what then is enabled to go into this space, right? Mm-hmm. That's the problem, is I don't know that. And I know there's, I'm not sure what you want to call it, I'm not going to call them safeguards. There's guidelines for that, what you just mentioned, but as we sit here, we don't know what that is. And it could be 55 feet high. And it could be a 50 or 100 unit apartment. We just don't know. That's where I'm coming from.
Councilman Schutte, then Councilman Bueller.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, that was one of my concerns earlier this week was looking at the residential neighborhood to the south of that as an R2 going to the R3 and the max what an R3 can do. That was a quandary of mine as well. And because we've been looking at it at other neighborhoods. But then after visiting with some, looking at this more, and thank you for Public Works Director Von Ive, the 60-foot max is what a C2 already is.
Correct.
When that came into the formula here, as I'm processing, working through this myself this week, a 60-foot structure could go in there right now as we speak, as is. So because it's not going from an R1 to an R3, that comes into play in this a little bit. I mean, I'm still looking at those houses to the south going, even if a neighborhood says something or doesn't say something, they show up or don't show up, you know, if we try to do this, you know, with integrity to try to navigate through this and do the same for each neighborhood, that's where my quandary was. But again, when I go to, well, it's a C2 already, so it's not quite apples for apples. So it can have a 60-foot building already. So I guess that is the thought. Now, granted, of course, down the road, we come up with a different R type of a R2, whatever B that gives us maybe the split this difference a little bit in certain neighborhoods. But anyway, going from a C2 to an R3 does, in some ways, I guess, clarify and keep it kind of moving forward potentially.
Councilman Bueller.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a question. Is it feasible? I mean, would it be feasible to the developer to just change? And I don't know if there's enough space, but the northern half of that, would it be possible to rezone that to R3, just that northern strip, or not? Is it not big enough?
I believe that's where you run into the sizing requirements that Brandy referred to earlier, that we'd be creating a non-conforming zoning district if we were to do that.
If I could, can you explain why it would be non-conforming?
The minimum area for that zoning district would not be met.
Okay.
The land area that's left.
Thank you.
Councilman Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Obviously, I have concerns about some of this discussion just because I feel like this is just another zoning designation that we're questioning. And these questions they've been vetted. We're no different than any other community with a lot of our zoning. You know, and C2 doesn't have any density requirements, is that correct, Ms. Hannon? But they also would be allowed a condition, well, not necessarily. They could go to the Board of Adjustment, ask for a conditional use to allow for apartments at 60 foot currently under the C2. And this is why I guess people are afraid to come to this board lately, is because if they're asking for a rezone when they can already do some of this, and they're trying to do it properly, and we're going to start seeing people go to the Board of Adjustment instead of to us for a proper rezone, because every time it's brought forward, we question our ordinances, and I don't know why I'm having back.
You could possibly try to hook up through Councilman Tuppers.
But it concerns me. We have I get some of the questions, but when we're actually downgrading the zoning to an R3, we're actually improving the area into something that someone's trying to solve an issue in our community, and that's housing. And he obviously wants to do the right thing and rezone it correctly and follow the density requirements set forth in the R3. I have great concerns over some of these questions that we're hearing.
Councilman Tupper.
I got a couple questions. Ms. Hatton, could you tell me, the Lawrence family owns a large apartment complex on Arrow Avenue just adjacent to this. Could you tell me what that's zoned as without a lot of work?
I believe it's R3. You can kind of see it.
Yep.
on the bottom there, which is multifamily
So
residential.
we do have adjacent R3.
And all of the campus is zoned R3 because we don't have a campus district right
Yeah.
now.
So it's not like we're not getting into the, it's not like we're going from R1 to R3 like we've dealt with in the past. And all due respect for Mr. Danforth, I understand where he's coming from, but I was at that plan commission meeting, and there again, there was only one person that called in and had any issues with it. So, you know, it seems to me that the rest of the neighborhood's pretty fine with it. So, and like I say, we do have a lot of R3, so we got enough transitional zoning there to take care of that. So thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could make
Director
one
Von Eyck?
correction on the nonconformities that would be created, it'd be due to the lot width, their inability to meet the lot width requirements, not the area. Is that correct, Brandy?
Yeah, and potentially the total square footage though too.
Okay.
Councilman Vilhauer.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Von Eyck, what was the vote of the planning commission?
Unanimous 6-0 in favor.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Councilman Danforth.
I just want Mr. Nguyen to realize that if this gets voted in and you get a building permit for building an apartment, you may not be able to continue the use of the storage units. Do you understand that? Okay. You can request conditional use, but you may not obtain it, correct? Once he pulls the, what you said
Manager,
earlier,
And-
once he pulls the building permit for the apartment building, then the
Yep.
conditional use that, for the storage units stops.
But that's where, so we'll continue working with the applicant to make sure that that coordination is meeting what he's trying to accomplish.
Okay, so, but my question is, or my point is when he pulls his building permit, the rental stops. He can't continue to market them, and eventually he's got to phase them out, correct? For rental outside of the people that live there, correct?
Well, and we'll talk, that's where we'll talk through it with the applicant, but if he wanted to do a mix of these uses, he could go to the Board of Adjustment before he would obtain his building permit so that he's able to have the mixed use going on. If he wants to still allow to have some storage units. But that's where we'll make sure that he's in conformance. We cannot issue the building permit until the property is brought into conformance.
But again, he needs approval to continue. If he goes for mixed use, it's still an approval, right?
Yeah, and I think
I
what
just want him
Brandy's
to
saying
understand,
is
I don't, no surprises here, right?
Yeah, that approval would come before he tries to get his building permit, is what Brandy's trying to say. So he would know all the cards will be on the table when he goes to get his building permit. So he doesn't get anything pulled out from under him once he gets that building permit.
Okay.
It would already be in place, it would already be approved, and he'd be good to go.
All right, Councilman Tupper.
Ms. Hanton, correct me if I'm wrong too, if he goes to use any of these storage units for, like garages for the apartments or storage for the apartments, they're non-conforming right now, they would all have to be recited?
Correct, yep.
So
And
they-
so they could be an accessory structure
Yep.
for,
So it's not gonna, I mean, it's not gonna look odd there to, okay, thank you.
yep.
All right, thank you. Mr. Nguyen, I just want to make sure that you're okay with the questions that were posed and to understand what the implications of the vote may be. Okay. Any further questions or comments, council? The motion is to approve the zoning request. All those in favor, please say, well, actually, we'll do a roll call vote.
Okay. Bueller? Danforth?
No,
Helene?
Yes.
Paulson? Shetty?
Yes.
Tupper?
Yes.
Vilhauer? Motion carries.
Motion is carried. We'll move on to item F, a presentation and acceptance of preliminary 2022 financial statements. Finance Officer Bob Zine.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So I handed out to the council and it's up on the screen. This is the time where we go through our preliminary financials for 2022. So what I'll do is I'll kind of start on the very left there is the general fund. So if we go all the way to the bottom, the big number to look at for the general fund is that we did dip into our fund balance around $484,000. Not really anything wrong with that. It's anticipated with what we budgeted for 22. Just there was some purchases we were trying to catch up on. So nothing big there. Our sales tax revenue did increase 12% over 2021. We were just shy of a $1.1 million increase over 2021. So that is excellent. That did help to kind of soften that blow to our unrestricted fund balance. The one thing I want to point out too is at the very bottom you see the $10.3 million of our unassigned. That's the one that we try to kind of keep very strong. That's the one that whenever we have anything dip below, the money's coming out of there. So I just want the council to take note that an additional $600,000 is slated to be carried over from 22. That'll touch that fund balance. And then also when we did our budget for 2023, we anticipate using a 1.2 out of that, 1.2 million out of that as well. So a total of 1.8. There again, it's all kind of planned. It's just that we want to, as we go into our budget for 24, we just want to be aware of that and probably continue our conservative budgeting for the general fund. Then the next column is the capital improvement fund. There again, when you look, that fund had about $24,000 decreasing of its fund balance. It's actually a little bit understated. We did take in $2 million of revenue. That was for our contributions to the ice arena. So it's actually a little bit, I don't want to say worse because that's not, we there again plan to use those dollars, but it looks a little bit overstated just because you can see that donation and contribution was a little over $2 million, kind of in the center there of the worksheet. The other big thing that I will point out, again, it's all planned. We all knew it, but we did increase our debt payments by 1.5 million. We're up to about 4.5 million annual for our debt payments. So again, what does that mean? We look at our in the capital improvement fund. It says assigned because it's assigned by ordinance, so it's not unrestricted. We have a little over 20 million sitting in there. It's very healthy, but we do already have some things slated to come out of that. We have, 2 million of that is set aside for the debt repayment from the ICE. 2 million still needs to be transferred to the project to complete the construction. Like I said, everything we've kind of talked about. And then the council will see at our next item actually on the agenda that we're bringing 2.7 million over kind of in that carryover. So what does that mean? It still means we've got a very healthy fund balance. It just, it kind of doesn't show everything that's already slated in there on the financials. So again, as we go into 2024, we just want to make sure that we're really focusing and prioritizing those future spending. And then, just because in the capital improvement fund, when we can keep that fund balance healthy, it helps us when we have these larger projects that sometimes go over budget or we have things that come up. So the city does a very good job of that. The third column in this worksheet is other governmental, and it groups everything. So it doesn't really paint a picture, but I will point some things out just to the council. The Park and Rec Fund did end its year with an increase to the fund balance of a little over $1 million. I will say though, $1 million of that was the money that we moved to help facilitate the ice arena's operations for the next 2 years. That was $1 million. So it still ended on a positive of about $87,000. The BBB fund had a strong year, increased the fund balance by $296,000. The third penny tax increased $88,000, 8% increase over 2021. The other fund that I think is important to point out into the governmentals is the Wellness Center Fund. We did see a decrease of $52,000 in that fund. So what that means is we kind of have to watch that. It is dipping into its reserves. The Wellness Center has not received a transfer from the general fund for, I think it's been pushing 4, possibly 5 years. So we kind of want to try to keep that fund balance healthy So the revenues did come in under budget for the wellness center. At the very, very bottom, you'll see there is the general long-term debt. So the total debt that is on our governmental funds at this time is $66.3 million. So, and that would be all of our bonds. On the next page is the enterprise funds. I don't have too much to report there. Again, those are the ones that kind of they operate themselves. I will say that we saw strong revenues across the board. As everyone's aware, we did kind of do some recent rate studies to the sewer, the solid waste. The revenues are strong, which is what we wanted because we have some bigger projects that are going to take place there. The airport fund is, again, doing really well. They've had a lot of grant funding for their capital projects and also some pretty large grant funding for operations, which has really helped at the airport. And utilities, nothing really to report there either. Strong revenues. They've got a lot of projects going on. I would say the enterprise funds have done an excellent job of putting in for SRF loans and grants when they were available to kind of keep that infrastructure working. And then the very, very bottom of that is how much money we have in the bank. So we are at 124, little close to 125 million. So if there's any questions on these, like I said, this is just kind of a requirement that I give you the preliminary financial statements for 22. We're currently in the audit, and the council will receive a full report once it is complete.
Thank you very much. Is it okay to ask questions? Do we want that?
Sure, I'll try.
Councilman Vilhauer.
Thank you, Mayor. Finance Officer Bob, just a couple questions. You said we're just starting our audit. Do you anticipate any adjustments to these numbers? I know we always get sales tax, some sales tax revenue and after the fact or audited sales tax number.
That's already in
That's
here.
already in there.
Those adjustments have already been made. I don't anticipate anything drastically changing from what you see here.
And also, I know that you've got kind of a safe harbor amount that you have in mind for the general fund as far as what you want to maintain in the general fund balance. Remind us again what that safe harbor is as far as days worth of expenses, or what is it that?
We try to keep it around the 3 to 4 months of operating for the general fund,
Okay.
which it's around the 4.5 to 5.5 million, just kind of depending on what the average has
So
been.
we're well over the safe
Yep.
harbor that you try to
Yep.
keep in mind. Okay, thank you.
Councilman Bueller.
Thank you. Finance Officer Bob Zine. No question for you. What do you attribute, and maybe you can't answer this, what would you attribute the 12% increase in sales tax to?
Ooh, that's a tough one. A lot of people, I think there again, inflation obviously makes sales tax go up. We also have a lot of construction projects going on, and we're getting the sales tax revenue off of those materials as well. So, but
Pretty good guess, I think.
pretty
Thank
good,
you.
I think.
City Manager Mack.
I would also add that we are fully receiving online the sales tax now, where last year and the year before it was kind of slow to collect those revenues, and so that's probably evened out a little bit as well. So it's all online purchases that are delivered in our zip code.
I would add that Watertown is awesome.
True.
Or Watertown's doing very well, so. Any further questions, comments?
I did need a motion just to accept it, that you guys accept it.
Is there a motion to, I don't see, okay, yeah, an acceptance, so sorry, we should have let's do that first. Do I have a motion to accept the statement? Motion made by Councilman Bueller, seconded by Councilman Paulson. Before I ask a question, any other questions? Finance Officer Bob Zine, I don't want people to get the wrong idea of the money that we have in the bank, because people might look at that and say, why are we bonding for anything? Because we're sitting on that much money. How would you explain that to the community?
So as much as it looks like a lot of money, you also have to remember that's all within the enterprise fund as well. A lot of our money that we do have is either restricted for debt or it has other restrictions on it, and it's also restricted for its use. So as much as it looks like we're pretty fluid in cash, you also kind of have to look at our annual budget. That's about 80 to 90 million on a year too. So I think then when you kind of put it into perspective, yeah, we're not that. It's not that much cash.
It's like having, you get your paycheck, but you know at the end of the year you have to pay taxes, you have to pay your heating bill, you have to pay for food, and it's not like you're sitting on all that. Most of it is already spent and earmarked.
True.
So, okay. Any further questions? All right, the motion is to accept it. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item G is an approval of Resolution 23-18 for a repeal or carryover of capital outlay appropriations for the 2022 fiscal year. Finance Officer Bob Zine.
Thank you, Mayor. So each year at this time, I reach out to the department heads and I kind of have them look at, now that we've finalized 22, we look at our capital expenditure accounts, and if there's projects that either have not been started or have not been completed, we have a 3-year window off of our home rule charter to carry those funds over to complete the projects or to start them. So before the council on the agenda, it kind of goes through them. The general fund, we're going to move about $604,000 over into 2023 to clean up some stuff that has to get done. Park and Rec, Wellness Center. I'm not going to go through all of them. If there's specific questions, I can try to answer them. But what this does is this just allows those projects to continue or to be started. So these have all been budgeted, all been approved before. So if there's any specific questions, I can help. Thank you.
All right. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the resolution. Motion made by Councilman Villauer, seconded by Councilman Schutte. Open it up for questions and comments. Here, Councilman Villauer.
Thank you, Mayor. I've probably asked this question before, but in my 8 years in the council, we have a 3-year carryover period, right? I mean, at the end of the 3rd year, some items probably do drop off, and we have to take action when that happens.
Nope, I keep track of when they meet that, and then they just aren't placed before you for a carryover.
Okay, so they automatic. So that's why we don't.
You won't
we
see
don't
them.
see them. Okay.
Nope, and then for that item to come back, it would have to go through the whole budget process again.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the resolution. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item H is an approval of a memorandum of understanding with the Coddington County. Okay, related to funding for the 14th Avenue Bridge reconstruction project. Public Works Director Von Eye.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. We've talked preliminary about this with the council. The staff have been working with the county staff. They are in the process of designing and rebuilding the 14th Avenue Northwest Bridge. Of course, that's the main structure there as it crosses over the Big Sioux River at the bottom of the hill on 14th Avenue. That discussion led to some interest in the city seeing it built wider than it exists today. The county, of course, would have interest in rebuilding it as is, where is, and reached out to us to see if we had an interest in expanding on that design. We agreed that that would be in the city's best interest for the future growth and expansion of the city, the functionality of 14th Avenue, its street classification, and then also some pedestrian connectivity. And so with that, we've came up with a memorandum of understanding on what that cost split might look like between the county and the city. The county, once an MOU is in place, they'd like to proceed with the design. So that's why this action item is before you tonight, so they can have their engineer, which, by the way, there's a representative here from Banner Engineering who's working for the county. They'd like to give them direction to go ahead and design it as both parties agree to. And then once that design is complete, I believe December is the timeline, they hope to apply for a bridge improvement grant through the South Dakota DOT. That big program would then assess and rank those applications, and we'd likely know by March-ish of next year whether they're awarded a big grant. And if they are, this whole MOU is under the context of them being awarded that 80-20 funding split from the big program. That 20% local share is what would be split between the county and the city, but not split evenly. Those numbers are in the financial impact statements of the agenda item here. The total cost of the bridge with engineering is estimated about $3.5 million. The 20% share of the local match is about $800,000 if they're awarded the big. And the city would be responsible for 38% of that $800,000, which is just over $300,000. So if this were approved, what we would do is work with the finance officer and schedule this $300,000 into our budget for the upcoming cycles. It's anticipated this construction would not occur until, or be complete until 2026, I believe it was. And so anyway, we'd work out the timing in the budget to reflect when we would anticipate any payment to the county and or the state based on the agreements that we would have in place. So to summarize all that, the MOU pretty much agrees that 62 to 38% split of the local share if a big were awarded. It agrees that we want to anticipate and participate in those costs based on an expanded width design. This would be similar to what we would have performed on the 3rd Avenue Bridge reconstruct. It allows for some pedestrian bike path and some additional width on both sides of the structure there. With that, I'll stand by for any questions. Assistant City Engineer Justin Peterson is online with us today. He's been helping facilitate a lot of this with the county and Banner Engineering.
Thank you. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding. Motion made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Schutte. Open it up for discussion, Council. Councilman Vilhauer.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Von Eye, are we pretty confident? It seems like we typically get those of the grants we'll be applying for. Is there any concerns about not getting them?
If they did not, I'm assuming, and I don't, maybe the engineer for the county could speak better to this, but I'm guessing the county would also not have a lot of interest in pulling trigger until they were awarded that big grant. So if not received this December, they'd apply for it in the next go round and take another shot at it, because I'm doubting they want to front the full cost as well. So is that assumption correct from your knowledge?
Thank you. Just please identify yourself for the record.
Yes, Mark Junker with Banner Associates. I'm the project manager for this project. And you're correct, Heath. There's a good chance of getting the 80% grant for this project. And the county would have second thoughts as well if they didn't get an 80% grant.
Any further questions? All right. So my question, and I believe that it was asked at a previous time when we were discussing this, but it is going to be safer for pedestrian traffic over that?
Yeah, correct. We've included Mark, was it an 8-foot bike path and then some other ancillary space for additional future lane widths and things of that nature? Is that correct?
Yeah, there'll be an 8-foot clear path on the south side for future bike path connectivity. And the width will allow for a future 3-lane urban section.
All right. Thank you. Any further questions, comments? Motion is to approve the MOU. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item I is a council authorization for the purchase of a vehicle for the street superintendent and to supplement the 2023 capital outlay budget by up to $50,000. Public Works Director Heath Von Eye, take it away.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank the council for taking this up. It's a unplanned, unbudgeted expense for the Public Works Department. It happens to be in the street division. Relates to the specific vehicle that the street superintendent operates. Here sometime back, they've been observing some issues with that vehicle. He currently operates a 2007 Ford Expedition that's got just under 115,000 miles on it. It was handed down to us by municipal utilities in roughly 2017, and that was when they were observing some transmission slip issues with the vehicle and decided to surplus it from their fleet. We went ahead and took it on for the use of the street superintendent at that time. The issues have progressed now to having engine issues to where we've got that assessed and looked at to where we could be spending thousands of dollars on timing chain and repair issues to the engine. And with any good fleet maintenance program, there comes a line in the sand, if you will, on where it makes sense to go ahead and pump more money into a vehicle, and where it does not. And this is one of those scenarios where it didn't pencil out to make sense to continue the use of this vehicle. All that being said, this just happened through happen chance in looking at current available vehicles on local lots. There is a pickup available at one of the local dealers that would fit the bill perfectly. It wouldn't need to be bid. It's underneath the $50,000 threshold for a vehicle purchase. We would receive some government bid pricing, so we get a little bit of a discount based on what the window sticker price is. And they'd also entertain a trade-in value on this Ford Expedition, which, by the way, if this were approved tonight, I wanted to mention we would need to add that as an amendment to the motion to approve the purchase, but then also designate the 07 Expedition as surplus and approval for trade-in. With that, I know Rob Bain, Street Superintendent's online with us here. The other point I wanted to make, why the urgency. You'll know, as you know, the council knows, we've had to approve early procurement for like police vehicles and other fleet pieces of equipment because of the long lead times that we have for some of this stuff, a year and a half out. We're simply in a position here where if we've got one on a lot and a local dealer wanting to pull the trigger on that rather than ending up having to budget for it in 24, wait till January to start that procurement process and maybe not end up with a vehicle till the middle of 25. So this, in our minds, made perfectly good sense to request a supplement to the 23 budget and go ahead and pull the trigger on a vehicle that exists on the lot today on a local dealer. With that, I'll stand by for questions.
Thank you very much. Chair will do some cleanup on this and entertain a motion first. Well, actually, I probably need to take official motion on the action and then amend it, but I'll do that first. So, Chair will entertain a motion to authorize the purchase of the vehicle. Motion made by Councilman Paulson, seconded by Councilman Vilhauer. And before we get too far into the discussion, Chair will also entertain a motion to amend this agenda item to add and to designate the 2007 Expedition as surplus and allow trade-in. Is there someone who would make that motion? Councilman Danforth and Councilman Schutte. So we are talking about the amendment now, just the amendment. Is there anyone who would like to comment on the amendment? Hearing none, the motion is to amend this agenda item with the words as stated. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carried. Now we are on to the agenda item as amended. Any comments, questions on this? Councilman Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I do know Rob and the street department haven't had, as you can see, they have a 2007, which I'm pretty sure was a hand-me-down from the utilities at the time. So I think that this has been one of those things that the can's just been kicked down the road so far. And yes, we're talking about a new street facility for them. We're finally taking action. And I support this fully just because I think it's time that, obviously a 07 and it's been used a lot, and that was already hand-me-down, so.
Any further comments, discussion? Councilman Schutte?
This question's for Rob. If I have a 1997 S10 with 260,000 miles. Didn't know if he'd be interested in that.
No.
It would fit 4 people.
Yeah.
It'll be under 50,000.
You can get it in just under that threshold? Okay. Any further discussion? All right, the motion is to approve or to authorize the purchase and designate the Expedition as surplus and trade-in. So all those in favor of that motion as amended, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. We're on to old business. Is there any old business? Just out of curiosity, City Manager Mack, did you want to give I saw that there was an update that came out today from Officer Troy Van Dusen about the flood. Any recap that you would like to tell the people of Watertown? I think overall it went well. Thank you for your response.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I can pull that up. That went out late this afternoon. The key takeaway, I guess, from that is residents who are looking to dispose of their sandbags can take them directly to the landfill, or you can drop them off at the Watertown Street facility, which is located at 730 Arrow Avenue. Or you can also take them to Sailboat Landing. You should not dispose of sandbags in the area lakes. Sandbags that have been in contact with water are contaminated with sewage, oil, and other pollutants, and they make them hazardous for our lakes. And we want to make sure that if you are dumping your sand, that it is not close to the water if you're taking it to Sailboat Landing. So, otherwise, we do have an internal working group from that group that is putting together sort of the playbook, covering the information that we went over this event, making sure that we have documented it all properly. So the next time something like this happens, we're not reinventing the wheel. And in the next several weeks, we'll start removing the HESCO baskets and sandbags that were placed around city infrastructure.
Thank you. Any further old business? Any new business? Councilman Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually have a few items that I'd like to bring up. One is probably controversial. Sorry, I'm just getting to my notes here. Well, okay, I'm going to start with this one. In light of the housing money coming available soon, or thoughts of it becoming available soon, we all know how the government works, especially the state government releasing funds. But I think that we need to start having a discussion on what our plan is as the city for housing in our community. And I bring this up from multiple angles, but I've mentioned in the past that I started discussions with Amanda on affordable housing program. I don't like that word, so I'm not going to try to use it too often, but kind of a program to help people maybe get into housing or help builders bring down the cost so we can get people in housing. But with this money coming available, I think it's essential to have a plan to move forward, because it appears that we're going to be on the hook for a third of the cost if we're awarded any money. And so I think that we need to have a plan moving forward, and I would like that as a discussion item at some point soon. I don't know if any other council members agree with me, but I think it's essential, and we're at a point where we need housing. We need workers in this community, and in order to continue to grow, that's going to be essential.
Did you have more, or did you want to deal with this? I would allow City Manager Mack to say something about that, but it's not time for a debate on that issue necessarily. But City Manager Mack?
Sure. I would just comment that, to the best of my knowledge, the city itself is not getting any direct funding from the state. This bill got passed 2 years ago, and then they had to repass it again this year. It's been sort of complicated. It's also my understanding that until the rules come out, we aren't entirely for sure what, if any, obligation the city would have, if it's a third, or half, or whatever. But the discussion at the time was the city or the municipality's third didn't necessarily have to be cash. It could be a TIF, it could be a donation of land, It could be a whole host of other things, but I don't think the rules have been flushed out yet. But to Councilman Paulson's point, once we have those rules, it would be good to have a discussion about how we intend to support that. The dollars are going to the housing authority, and I think, well, a certain percentage of it, I don't want to get the numbers wrong, is directly for infrastructure, so things under the ground, and then the rest of it is for other housing-related construction things. So through the LIP program, right? And Michelle's here. I don't know if she wants to correct. Long story short, there's money coming, not directly to us, but we don't have a real clear direction yet on how those dollars are getting spent. So.
Is this on? Yep. Okay. Michelle Kokachik, Watertown Development Company. And, you know, Amanda's right. The rules are still under review for this. I know, keeping updated on it with some of the professional associations, but it's split into kind of two sections, $50 million in grants, which is the ARPA money, and that is restricted to just some very specific infrastructure uses. Another 50% or another $50 million in grants that are a little bit more of expanded uses, and then $100 million into a revolving loan fund. 70% of that money for the next 2 years was slated to be for communities that weren't Rapid City or Sioux Falls, and then 30% is for Rapid City or Sioux Falls. And then also communities of our size could double dip, so to speak, was the plan, where we could do loans and a grant on the same project.
All right. Any further new business? Would anyone like to speak before Councilman Paulson speaks a second time? Councilman Paulson.
Okay. So my second item would be, I don't know how to word this without probably making the WMU mad, but if we drive around town right now, obviously we have noticeable concerns with our streets, and I know our street department is working every single day trying to fix as much as they can, and obviously that's hard without asphalt plants being open right now, and using cold mix isn't a long-term solution by any means, but a lot of the issues we're seeing right now are because of the utilities trenching across our streets. 2nd Street Northwest is a perfect example. We feel it on 19th Street East, 3rd Street by the hospital is another one. You know, there's a lot of concerns with that. I have huge concerns. I've brought this up before, I know, but I would personally like WMU to start chipping in for street repair, because we have another issue on a brand new street on 8th Avenue East, brand new, put in last year, one lift on. WMU's contractor did not do any compaction, it appears, on some of the valves they put in, and we're seeing that settling now. And that's just an example of what we're seeing around town, and we're on the hook for it. We're the ones that always get blamed for the road conditions, not putting enough money into it, and I don't think we're fully responsible for a lot of the issues we see around town. And I personally think the WMU should step up to the game and fix their mistakes. And going into the budgeting process right now, I think that this is an important discussion that we need to have with them. Personally, that's how I feel, and I hope I get some of the support from my fellow council members here. But I think it's vital to move forward with our street reconstructions. Oh, Watertown Municipal Utilities is WMU.
All right. Any further new business? Councilman Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. This one's also going to be controversial, especially with Michelle sitting here. And I'm going to say thank you for your service to Watertown, Michelle. We all appreciate it. Sad to see that you're leaving, but fully understand. And I hope nothing but the best in the future. But this is about WDC, Watertown Development. Why am I spacing on the C?
Watertown Development Company.
Company, yeah. I don't know why I was spacing there, but in light of Michelle leaving, now we've seen 3 executive directors leave the WDC in the last 3 years. And that's concerning to me, and not to me. There's a lot of members around the community that have huge concerns over that. Not only the reason as to why people are leaving, which obviously there's theories about that, but I think that we need to have serious discussions about reducing their funding, severely reducing their funding, until the WDC can demonstrate that they're aligned with the direction of our community and our council. I feel like we have laid out in the past to the board members that we wish them to go in a different direction than they were going in, and I feel like we were fought on that, and subsequently did not see them change the direction. And you know, I do really have concerns about what's going on over there. I don't know why. I don't know you know, when these discussions should be had, but right now, again, during the budgeting time, I think this is a vital point to bring up. We need to see a return on our investment, not only for the WDC, but for all of the companies that we're giving money to. And that, you know, that filters down to the CVB, the chamber, and all of those organizations that we give funding to. And I personally don't think we're seeing accountability. We don't, you know, I know the WDC and Michelle has given some reports, a yearly report, and I like that aspect, but we don't see that from every organization. And I think we need a measurable point where we need to point to and say, are we getting our return on investment, to hold these companies or organizations accountable. So I think that, you know, I want to have that discussion, and again, asking for fellow council members' support on this.
Thank you. Any further new business? Any liaison member reports? Councilman Shetty.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm actually going to put someone on the spot here, the director of the library, if they could come up here and if they could share the latest hire for the regional library, if you could. I'm on the board for the library, so that's why I wanted to just have Maria share for us tonight.
Yeah, we just hired, well, actually about a month ago, we hired a new assistant director. Very excited about it. Her name is Laura Hinman. She's coming to us from Midland University in Fremont, Nebraska, where she's the library director right now. And she has some previous public library experience too. And we were really excited about the fact that she's originally from Volga, so it's kind of like a hometown girl coming back.
All right. Actually, on that point, I'm a Midland University graduate myself, so we know what we're doing here at the library.
Do you know the Dewey Decimal System?
Yeah. Her start date is June 1st.
All right. Thank you very much. Councilman Tupper?
Just a little update, and I think you've all seen the press release that came out from the Watertown Volunteer Center. The Volunteer Center at this point has suspended its operation. It wasn't an easy decision to make. Over the last 3 years, especially COVID, and when COVID hit, that kind of put a dampener on volunteers. I think a lot of people quit using the Volunteer Center to reach out for volunteers. They got a little bit more conveniently handy on reaching out for their own volunteers. I think the number of volunteers has dramatically dropped off, and the opportunities have dramatically dropped off. And as being one of the board members, I think we kind of seen the writing on the wall. Like I say, at this time it's just been suspended. We're hoping somebody else will maybe pick it up and take it over, but commend the people that have run it over the years, and the director that we have now. You know, like I say, the writing's on the wall. It's not feasible to keep it going. It does take money to keep it going, and had to make that hard decision. But so,
Thank you. Any further liaison member reports? Any announcements? Councilman Vilhauer.
Thank you, Mayor. Not an announcement, but a question. Manager Mack or the Director Von I or Street Superintendent Bainan, what is the projected startup time for the asphalt plant? Do we have any kind of idea?
Yeah, the last I heard, it was coming up here in the middle of May-ish. We've also, so there's two sources that we go to, our local plant. That's a little bit more hit and miss on availability on when their plant is up and running, or otherwise we truck to Brookings and use the Bowes Construction asphalt plant that's down there to pick up hot mix. And
so that plant is up and running down in Brookings?
no, not to my knowledge. Rob, if you could chime in on the specifics there, please.
Yep, absolutely. Can you guys hear me?
Yep. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. It looks like the 8th of May is when Bowes is supposed to start up, and the week of the 15th is when Dunix is supposed to open.
Okay.
Currently.
Okay, thank you.
As of I talked to Dunix, and that is when they said they'd try to open up by the 15th.
Okay, thank you.
If I could, Mayor, expand on that question just a little bit, share some information with the council. Street Superintendent Bain and the Assistant City Engineer Peterson and myself have been working together on assessing the current fiscal year's capital construction budget. And given the amount of winter season and spring street damage we've seen, it's amazing how much that can fluctuate from year to year. And this year appears to be a very heavy year where we're seeing a lot of street damage from the freeze-thaw cycles. Of course, all that's attributed to the different soil conditions, moisture content going into the fall and the winter, and the amount of freeze-thaw cycles we see throughout the spring. All that attributes to what the conditions of the roads look like in the spring. Given that it's such a high amount of distress that we're seeing on our pavements here this spring, what we're doing in the budget is trying to shift money to add to the mill and overlay project and also add to the large patch project. We don't have any numbers finalized quite yet, but we're getting close. The reason I share that is we also may have interest in looking to supplement this year's budget to add more to those two projects. If we feel that that's appropriate, we'll of course bring that recommendation forward to the council through the city manager and finance officers, discussions with them.
Councilman Vilhauer.
Thank you, Mayor. A follow-up to that, Heath. Okay, suppose we do allocate more dollars or budget more dollars. Is the product or the services available to, fix our streets?
Yeah, those discussions are happening or will be happening very soon with our contractors as we're kicking off those projects and having pre-construction meetings. But we would explore that with them. We have not got a definitive on anything yet, but we'll definitely take all that into consideration.
Thank you.
Any further announcements? Hearing none, we do have a reason to go into executive session tonight for a contractual issue. We will not be taking action when we get out. And therefore, I do need a motion to go into executive session. Motion made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Schutte. Any discussion on that? All those in favor of going into executive session, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. We are in executive session. We'll take a very short break and see you back here very fast.